The fluorescent lights of courtroom 4B cast harsh shadows across the polished mahogany benches, creating an atmosphere as cold and unforgiving as the divorce proceedings about to unfold. Elena Martinez sat rigidly in the second row, her hands folded carefully over a manila folder that contained what remained of her 15-year marriage. Her simple navy dress, purchased from a discount retailer 3 weeks earlier, seemed to shrink under the weight of the expensive suits surrounding her. From wherever you're watching this story unfold, whether you're in California, Texas, or anywhere across this country, you've probably seen scenes like this play out in courtrooms everywhere. The powerful dismissing the powerless, success rewriting history to suit the victor. The heavy oak doors swung open with practiced authority, and Marcus Wellington III entered like he owned not just the room, but the very concept of justice itself. His charcoal Armani suit fit him perfectly, tailored to emphasize his broad shoulders and commanding presence. Behind him followed his legal team, 3 attorneys from the prestigious firm of Blackstone, Mueller and Associates, their leather briefcases gleaming under the courtroom lights. Marcus's silver hair was perfectly styled, his jaw clean-shaven, and his blue eyes held the confidence of a man who had never truly lost anything that mattered to him. Elena's public defender, David Chun, looked up from his stack of papers and adjusted his glasses nervously. His off-the-rack suit was wrinkled from too many long nights spent juggling dozens of cases, and his briefcase showed years of wear. But his eyes held something that Marcus's expensive legal team seemed to lack: genuine concern for his client. Judge Patricia Hendricks entered the courtroom with measured steps, her black robe flowing behind her as she took her seat at the bench. Her gray hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and her sharp brown eyes surveyed the room with the wisdom of someone who had presided over hundreds of divorce cases. She had seen every type of marital dissolution, from amicable splits to bitter warfare, but something about this case had caught her attention during the preliminary hearings. Marcus's lead attorney, Jonathan Blackstone himself, rose to address the court. His voice carried the polished confidence of decades spent in courtrooms, representing the wealthy and powerful. "Your Honor," he began, "my client Marcus Wellington is a self-made success story, a testament to American achievement and determination. He built his legal career from absolutely nothing, through pure talent, dedication, and tireless work. He transformed himself from a middle-class background into one of the most respected corporate attorneys in the state." Elena watched Marcus nod approvingly at this characterization, his expression radiating the satisfaction of a man hearing his own greatness acknowledged. She noticed how he straightened his tie, a small gesture she had seen thousands of times during their marriage whenever he received praise or recognition. Blackstone continued his opening statement, painting Marcus as a brilliant legal mind who had single-handedly built a partnership at one of the city's most prestigious law firms. He specialized in complex patent law and corporate litigation, cases that required not just legal expertise, but technical understanding that few attorneys possessed. His success had provided the comfortable lifestyle that Elena had enjoyed for over a decade, the attorney explained, gesturing toward Elena with barely concealed disdain. Meanwhile, Blackstone described Elena as someone who had never worked outside the home during their marriage, never contributed financially to their household, and never demonstrated any particular skills or abilities beyond basic domestic tasks. She was, in his words, entirely dependent on Marcus's success and generosity. David Chun scribbled notes furiously, his pen moving across the yellow legal pad as he documented every claim. Elena noticed how he paused occasionally, circling certain phrases and adding question marks in the margins. She found herself oddly comforted by his attention to detail, something that reminded her of her own methodical approach to problem-solving. When Marcus himself took the witness stand, he commanded attention effortlessly. His voice was rich and authoritative as he described his journey from law school to partnership. He spoke of 18-hour days, of sacrificing weekends and holidays to master complex cases, of building relationships with clients through sheer determination and expertise. He painted a picture of Elena as someone who had been there, certainly, but who had never truly contributed anything meaningful to his success. "She never contributed anything," Marcus stated with devastating certainty, his eyes meeting Elena's briefly across the courtroom. She handled some household tasks and social obligations. But in terms of my career, my achievements, my financial success, Elena was essentially a passenger. I built everything we have through my own efforts. The words hit Elena like physical blows, but she maintained her composure. She had learned long ago to keep her emotions carefully controlled, a skill that had served her well in ways that no one in this courtroom yet understood. Her fingers tightened slightly around her manila folder, the only outward sign of her inner turmoil. Judge Hendricks observed Elena's reaction carefully. There was something about the defendant's quiet dignity that seemed at odds with the helpless dependent being described by the plaintiff's attorney. Elena sat with perfect posture, her organizational skills evident in the neat way she had arranged her few documents. When she took notes, her handwriting was precise and technical, not the sprawling script one might expect from someone without formal education or professional experience. Marcus's testimony continued for nearly an hour, detailing his law school achievements, his early career victories, and his rise to partnership. He spoke with particular pride about his specialization in patent law, describing how he had developed expertise in complex technical matters that set him apart from other attorneys. His success in representing technology companies and inventors had built his reputation and secured his financial future. Throughout his testimony, Marcus repeatedly emphasized his individual achievements. He alone had passed the bar exam on his first attempt. He alone had impressed the senior partners at Blackstone, Mueller and Associates. He alone had built the client relationships that sustained his practice. Elena, according to Marcus, had simply been present while he accomplished everything of significance. David Chin's cross-examination was brief but pointed. He asked Marcus about his financial resources during law school, questions that Marcus answered with vague references to scholarships and family support. When Chun pressed for specific details about tuition payments and living expenses, Marcus became slightly irritated, dismissing such ancient history as irrelevant to current proceedings. Chun also inquired about Elena's background before their marriage, questions that seemed to surprise Marcus. The attorney asked about Elena's education and early career, prompts that Marcus answered with obvious discomfort. He admitted that Elena had worked in some technical field before their marriage but claimed not to remember the specific details. It was nothing significant, he insisted, certainly nothing that contributed to his legal career. As the morning session concluded, Elena remained seated while the courtroom emptied around her. David Chun approached her with a gentle expression, his voice kind as he asked if she was holding up okay. She nodded quietly, but something in her eyes suggested a strength that her simple appearance didn't immediately reveal. Marcus gathered his expensive legal team around him near the courtroom doors, their voices carrying across the nearly empty room as they discussed strategy. Their confidence was obvious, their satisfaction evident. They clearly believed they had established Marcus's narrative successfully and positioned Elena as exactly what they claimed she was, a dependent housewife with no legitimate claim to her husband's success. But as Elena finally stood to leave, David Chun noticed something interesting. She moved with the precise efficiency of someone accustomed to complex problem-solving, and when she organized her papers, her methodology suggested systematic thinking rather than random shuffling. Most intriguingly, when she reviewed the notes she had taken during Marcus's testimony, her handwriting included technical abbreviations and symbols that seemed oddly sophisticated for someone supposedly lacking professional experience. Elena paused at the courtroom door and looked back at the witness stand where Marcus had delivered his devastating assessment of her contributions. For just a moment, something flickered across her face that might have been amusement, or perhaps anticipation. Then she turned and walked out into the hallway, her manila folder held securely at her side, leaving behind a courtroom full of people who had no idea what secrets that simple folder might contain. David Chun remained behind, reviewing his notes one more time. Something about Marcus's testimony bothered him, inconsistencies that he couldn't quite identify, but that nagged at his instincts. He had been practicing law long enough to recognize when a story was too neat, too convenient, too perfectly constructed. As he gathered his own papers and prepared to leave, he made a mental note to dig deeper into the financial records from Marcus's law school years. Sometimes the most important truths were hidden in the most unexpected places. The second day of proceedings began with Jonathan Blackstone presenting what he called the Marcus Wellington Success Timeline, a carefully orchestrated presentation designed to cement his client's reputation as a self-made legal genius. Large monitors displayed Marcus's achievements chronologically, from his law school graduation magna cum laude to his current partnership status at one of the most prestigious firms in the state. Blackstone called his first witness, senior partner Harrison Mueller, a distinguished man in his 70s whose silver beard and commanding presence had intimidated opposing counsel for decades. Mueller took the witness stand with the confidence of someone whose opinion carried significant weight in legal circles throughout the state. Marcus Wellington is quite simply one of the most brilliant legal minds I have encountered in 45 years of practice, Mueller testified, his voice carrying the authority of decades in courtrooms. When he joined our firm 12 years ago as a junior associate, his grasp of complex patent law was already exceptional. But what truly set him apart was his ability to understand intricate technical concepts that most attorneys find completely baffling. Mueller described how Marcus had quickly distinguished himself by taking on cases that other lawyers avoided, complex patent disputes involving cutting-edge technology and engineering concepts. He spoke of Marcus's remarkable ability to master technical documentation, to understand engineering principles, and to translate complex scientific concepts into persuasive legal arguments that judges and juries could comprehend. Within 3 years, Mueller continued, Marcus had brought in clients that generated over $2 million in annual revenue for our firm. His reputation for handling the most challenging intellectual property cases spread throughout the corporate community. Companies specifically requested Marcus Wellington because they knew he could grasp technical details that other patent attorneys simply could not understand. Elena listened to this testimony with the same careful attention she had shown the previous day, her expression remaining neutral even as Mueller painted Marcus as a technical genius whose understanding of engineering and scientific principles bordered on the supernatural. She made precise notes, her handwriting maintaining the same systematic organization that David Chun had noticed before. The parade of character witnesses continued throughout the morning. Marcus's law school roommate, now a successful prosecutor, testified about Marcus's legendary study habits and his natural aptitude for understanding complex legal concepts. A former professor described Marcus as the most gifted student he had taught in 30 years of academia, someone who possessed an almost intuitive understanding of both legal principles and technical applications. Each witness emphasized the same theme. Marcus Wellington was entirely self-sufficient, completely self-made, and remarkably gifted in ways that ordinary people simply could not match. More importantly, each witness testified that they had never heard Marcus mention receiving any meaningful assistance or support from Elena during his rise to prominence. When Blackstone asked Marcus's former roommate about Elena's role during law school, the man looked genuinely puzzled. I honestly don't remember Marcus ever mentioning her contributing anything to his studies or his success, he testified. Marcus was completely focused on his legal education. If Elena was providing any kind of support or assistance, it certainly wasn't significant enough for Marcus to mention to his closest friends. The most devastating testimony came from Marcus's mother, Victoria Wellington, an elegant woman whose pearl necklace and designer suit spoke of old money and social prominence. She took the witness stand with the bearing of someone accustomed to being listened to and believed without question. Victoria Wellington painted a picture of Elena as a calculating woman who had deliberately targeted her successful son for financial security. She described Elena as coming from a working-class background with no education, no professional prospects, and no family resources. According to Victoria, Elena had recognized Marcus's potential early in their relationship and had positioned herself to benefit from his inevitable success. My son has always been brilliant, academically and professionally, Victoria testified with the certainty of maternal pride. Elena contributed nothing to his achievements except perhaps some basic household management after they married. She was very fortunate that Marcus was generous enough to provide for her despite her complete lack of skills or education. Victoria's testimony grew more pointed as she described what she saw as Elena's parasitic relationship with her son. Elena never worked during their marriage because she simply wasn't capable of contributing anything meaningful to their household income. She spent Marcus's money freely while contributing absolutely nothing to earning it. Now that Marcus has finally recognized the one-sided nature of their relationship, Elena is desperately trying to claim credit for achievements that were entirely my son's accomplishment. David Chun objected several times to Victoria's characterizations, but Judge Hendricks allowed most of the testimony to stand as the witness's personal observations and opinions. Elena watched Marcus's mother deliver this withering assessment with the same careful composure she had maintained throughout the proceedings, though David Chun noticed her fingers tighten almost imperceptibly around her pen. The afternoon session focused on financial documentation that Blackstone presented as evidence of Marcus's complete financial independence during their marriage. Bank records showed substantial earnings from his law practice, investment accounts that had grown steadily over the years, and property acquisitions that reflected Marcus's increasing prosperity. Throughout this presentation, Blackstone emphasized that Elena's name appeared on accounts only as a beneficiary spouse, never as a contributor or co-owner in any meaningful sense. He described her as someone who had enjoyed the fruits of Marcus's labor without ever planting, watering, or harvesting anything herself. Elena has lived a comfortable lifestyle for 15 years entirely because of Marcus's generosity and success, Blackstone argued. She has never contributed a single dollar of earned income to their household. She has never brought any professional skills or business knowledge to their partnership. She has simply been present while Marcus built everything they have through his own exceptional abilities and tireless work. As the afternoon wore on, Marcus himself returned to the witness stand to provide additional details about his professional achievements. He spoke with obvious pride about specific cases he had won, complex patent disputes where his technical understanding had been crucial to victory. He described working late into the night mastering engineering principles, studying scientific journals, and developing expertise that set him apart from other attorneys. Marcus emphasized repeatedly that these achievements had been entirely individual accomplishments. He had never received assistance with case preparation, technical research, or professional development. Elena, according to his testimony, had been completely uninvolved in his professional life except as someone who occasionally attended firm social events. When David Chen's turn came for cross-examination, he began asking questions that seemed oddly specific and pointed. He inquired about Marcus's finances during law school, questions that Marcus answered with increasing irritation and decreasing precision. Chen asked about tuition payments, living expenses, and the source of funds that had supported Marcus's education. Marcus's answers became notably vague when Chen pressed for specific details. He mentioned scholarships and family support, but when Chen asked for documentation or specific amounts, Marcus claimed not to remember such ancient history. It was 15 years ago, Marcus said with obvious annoyance. I can't be expected to remember every financial detail from my student days. Chen then asked questions that surprised everyone in the courtroom, including Marcus. He inquired about Elena's educational background, her work history before their marriage, and her professional qualifications. Marcus's answers revealed a startling lack of knowledge about his own wife's background and capabilities. When Chen asked about Elena's college education, Marcus admitted he wasn't entirely sure what she had studied. When asked about her work experience, Marcus gave vague answers about some kind of technical job that she had held briefly before their marriage. Most telling was Marcus's response when Chen asked whether Elena had ever provided technical assistance or consultation during his career. Marcus laughed dismissively at the suggestion. Elena doesn't understand legal work, and she certainly doesn't understand the complex technical concepts involved in patent law. She has no background in engineering or science. The idea that she could contribute anything meaningful to my professional practice is simply ridiculous. David Chun made careful notes throughout this testimony, his expression growing more thoughtful as Marcus's answers revealed the depth of his dismissive attitude toward his wife's capabilities and background. Chen requested permission to file discovery motions for financial records from the period surrounding Marcus's law school years, a request that prompted immediate objections from Blackstone's team. Your Honor, Blackstone argued, fishing expeditions into ancient financial records serve no legitimate purpose in these proceedings. Mr. Chun is simply trying to delay these proceedings while he searches desperately for some way to support his client's baseless claims. Financial records from 15 years ago have no relevance to the current distribution of marital assets. Judge Hendricks considered the request carefully before ruling that limited financial discovery for the specified time period would be allowed. She instructed both parties to produce relevant banking records, loan documentation, and tuition payment records for Marcus's law school years. Marcus's confident demeanor faltered slightly at this ruling, though he quickly recovered his composure. "Good luck finding anything relevant from that long ago," he told David Chun with a smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Most of those records are probably long gone, and even if they exist, they won't show anything except what I've already testified to, that I funded my own education and built my own success." Elena's reaction to this exchange was subtle but unmistakable to anyone watching carefully. For the first time during the proceedings, something that might have been anticipation flickered across her face. Her posture shifted almost imperceptibly, like someone who had been waiting patiently for exactly this moment to arrive. As court recessed for the day, Marcus gathered his legal team for another confident strategy session near the courtroom doors. Their voices carried across the room as they dismissed Chin's discovery requests as desperate fishing expeditions that would ultimately prove nothing. Their satisfaction was obvious, their certainty unshaken. But David Chun remained at the plaintiff's table long after the courtroom had emptied, reviewing his notes with growing interest. Something about Marcus's testimony had convinced him that this case contained secrets that no one had yet uncovered. Elena's calm confidence in the face of systematic humiliation suggested someone who possessed knowledge that had not yet been revealed. As Elena gathered her simple manila folder and prepared to leave, she paused to speak quietly with David Chun. Her voice was barely audible, but her words carried a certainty that surprised him. "Those financial records you requested will be very interesting reading. Marcus seems to have forgotten some important details about how his law school education was actually funded." Then she walked out of the courtroom, leaving behind a room full of people who still had no idea that their carefully constructed narrative was about to crumble under the weight of documented truth. The third day of proceedings began with an unexpected development that would shift the entire trajectory of the case. David Chun arrived at court carrying a thick manila envelope that he handled with the careful attention usually reserved for explosive materials. Inside were the preliminary financial records he had requested, documents that had taken his small legal team most of the previous evening to review and analyze. Judge Hendricks called the court to session promptly at 9 o'clock, her expression indicating that she expected this day to move more efficiently than the previous sessions. Jonathan Blackstone and his team appeared supremely confident, their expensive suits and polished presentations radiating the assurance of attorneys who believed victory was already assured. Marcus entered the courtroom with his characteristic commanding presence, but Elena noticed something different about his demeanor. His smile seemed slightly forced, and he glanced toward David Chin's table with what might have been curiosity or concern. Elena herself sat with the same composed dignity she had maintained throughout the proceedings, but something had changed in her posture. She sat straighter, her hands folded with quiet confidence rather than nervous tension. David Chun stood to address the court, his voice carrying more authority than it had in previous sessions. "Your Honor," he began, "the preliminary financial records we requested have raised some interesting questions that require additional investigation. With the court's permission, I would like to present some findings that may significantly impact these proceedings." Judge Hendricks nodded for him to proceed, while Blackstone shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The expensive legal team exchanged glances that suggested they had not anticipated any significant revelations from what they had dismissed as ancient financial history. Chun approached the court with a series of bank statements and financial documents spread across a portable presentation board. "Your Honor, these records show tuition payments for Marcus Wellington's law school education totaling approximately $60,000 over 3 years. However, these payments did not come from the sources that Mr. Wellington described in his testimony." Marcus leaned forward slightly, his confident expression flickering for just a moment before he regained his composure. Blackstone rose immediately to object, claiming that 15-year-old financial records were irrelevant to current asset distribution, But Judge Hendricks overruled the objection and instructed Chun to continue his presentation. The payments were made systematically, Chun explained, showing bank transfer records on the courtroom monitors. Every semester for 3 years, tuition payments of approximately $10,000 were transferred directly to the law school's financial office. Living expenses, textbooks, and even bar exam fees were paid through the same systematic process. Chun paused dramatically before revealing his most important finding. However, Your Honor, these payments did not come from scholarships, family support, or student loans as Mr. Wellington testified. They came from a personal savings account registered under a different name entirely. The courtroom fell silent as the implications of this statement settled over the assembled attorneys and observers. Marcus's face remained carefully neutral, but Elena noticed the slight tightening around his eyes that she had learned to recognize during their 15 years of marriage as a sign of growing anxiety. Marcus's attorney Jonathan Blackstone requested an immediate sidebar conference with Judge Hendricks, during which heated whispered conversations took place for several minutes. When they returned to their positions, Blackstone's expression had hardened into the kind of defensive posture that Elena recognized from countless courtroom dramas. Blackstone addressed the court with renewed aggression, claiming that Chin's presentation was based on incomplete information and premature conclusions. Your Honor, he argued, these records obviously show family support or loan payments that were processed through different accounts for administrative convenience. The source of these payments doesn't change the fundamental fact that Marcus Wellington earned his legal education through his own academic merit and hard work. But Chin was prepared for this response. He requested permission to present additional evidence that would clarify the true source of these systematic payments. Judge Hendricks, clearly intrigued by these developments, granted the request and ordered both parties to produce complete financial records for the relevant time period. Marcus himself requested permission to address the court, rising from his seat with less confidence than he had shown during his previous testimony. Your Honor, he said, his voice carrying a slight edge of irritation, I can't be expected to remember every detail about financial arrangements made 15 years ago. Whatever these records show, they obviously represent some form of family assistance or temporary loan arrangements that were completely separate from my personal achievements and professional success. Chun then made a request that sent ripples of tension through Marcus's legal team. He asked the court to subpoena not just bank records, but also scholarship documentation, student loan records, and any correspondence related to the funding of Marcus's legal education. He specifically requested records from Elena's financial institutions during the same time period. This request prompted fierce objections from Blackstone's team, who argued that such broad discovery requests constituted harassment and exceeded the scope of legitimate inquiry. They claimed that Chun was conducting a fishing expedition designed to delay proceedings and embarrass their client without any legitimate legal basis. Judge Hendricks considered these arguments carefully before making a ruling that would prove crucial to the case's outcome. She ordered full financial disclosure for both parties covering the period from 2 years before Marcus began law school through 1 year after his graduation and bar admission. This disclosure would include all bank records, loan documentation, scholarship records, and any other financial instruments used to fund Marcus's legal education. Elena's reaction to this ruling was subtle but unmistakable. Her shoulders relaxed slightly, and something that might have been satisfaction flickered across her carefully composed features. She exchanged a brief glance with David Chun, and he noticed that her expression held quiet confidence rather than the anxiety that had characterized her demeanor during the previous sessions. Marcus's response to the court's ruling was more complex. Publicly, he maintained his dismissive attitude, expressing confidence that complete financial disclosure would only confirm what he had already testified. However, Elena noticed subtle signs of growing unease. The way he loosened his tie slightly, the increased frequency with which he consulted with his legal team, and the tension in his jaw that suggested carefully controlled anxiety. During the lunch recess, Marcus gathered his expensive legal team in an empty conference room down the hall from the courtroom. Their conversation, though conducted in lowered voices, carried an urgency that had been absent from their previous strategy sessions. Elena, walking past the room on her way to meet with David Chun, could hear fragments of heated discussion about document control and damage limitation. Chen used the recess to brief Elena about the next phase of their strategy. As they sat in a small cafe near the courthouse, he explained that the preliminary financial records had revealed patterns that suggested a much more complex story than Marcus had presented in his testimony. The payments were too systematic and too substantial to represent casual family assistance, Chen explained to Elena. Someone was systematically funding not just tuition, but living expenses, professional examination fees, and even interview wardrobe costs. This level of financial support suggests a significant personal investment in Marcus's legal education. Elena listened to this analysis with the same careful attention she had shown throughout the proceedings, but Chen noticed that she seemed unsurprised by these revelations. When he asked whether she had any knowledge about the source of these payments, Elena's response was carefully measured but telling. "I think the complete financial records will tell a very interesting story," she said quietly. "Marcus seems to have forgotten some important details about how his law school years were actually funded. Perhaps seeing the documentation will refresh his memory about who actually made his legal career possible." The afternoon session focused on procedural matters related to the expanded discovery requests, but the atmosphere in the courtroom had shifted dramatically. Marcus's legal team, previously confident and dismissive, now argued every point with the intensity of attorneys who recognized that their carefully constructed narrative was under serious threat. Elena's lawyer filed additional requests for employment records, tax returns, and professional licensing documentation that would provide context for the financial transfers they had already discovered. Each request was fought vigorously by Blackstone's team, but Judge Hendricks consistently ruled in favor of complete disclosure. As the day's proceedings concluded, Marcus approached Elena directly for the first time since the divorce proceedings had begun. His voice carried a combination of anger and uncertainty as he demanded to know what she thought she was accomplishing with these ridiculous investigations into ancient history. Elena's response was delivered with quiet dignity but unmistakable resolve. "I'm simply ensuring that the truth comes to light, Marcus. You've spent 3 days telling this court that you built your success entirely through your own efforts. Perhaps it's time for everyone to learn exactly how that success was actually funded." Marcus started to respond angrily, but Elena turned and walked away before he could continue the conversation. David Chen, who had witnessed this exchange, noticed that Elena moved with the confidence of someone who possessed knowledge that would soon become public. As court adjourned for the day, Judge Hendricks announced that proceedings would resume in 48 hours to allow both parties sufficient time to compile the requested financial documentation. She emphasized that she expected complete cooperation with all discovery requests and warned both legal teams that any attempts to obstruct the disclosure process would result in serious sanctions. The courtroom emptied slowly, but the tension that had built throughout the day lingered in the air like an approaching storm. Marcus's legal team huddled together near their table, their voices carrying the urgency of attorneys who suddenly realized they might have seriously underestimated their opposition. Elena gathered her simple manila folder and prepared to leave, but she paused at the courtroom door to look back at the witness stand where Marcus had confidently proclaimed his complete independence and self-made success. For the first time during the entire proceedings, she allowed herself a small smile. The truth, she knew, was about to emerge from 15 years of carefully buried financial records, and that truth would change everything. The courtroom atmosphere on day 5 carried an electric tension that made even the bailiff shift uncomfortably in his chair. David Chen had spent the previous 48 hours meticulously organizing financial documents that would transform this divorce proceeding from a simple asset division into something far more consequential. Elena sat with perfect composure, her hands folded calmly over her manila folder, while Marcus appeared for the first time since proceedings began wearing a suit that seemed slightly too tight around his shoulders. Judge Hendricks called the session to order promptly, her sharp eyes taking in the dramatically different energy that now filled her courtroom. Jonathan Blackstone and his team had clearly spent the recess in intensive preparation, their table covered with defensive documentation and legal briefs designed to minimize whatever revelations were about to emerge. David Chen rose to address the court with documents that he handled like precious artifacts. "Your Honor," he announced, The complete financial records we requested have revealed information that fundamentally changes our understanding of how Marcus Wellington's legal career was actually funded. With the court's permission, I would like to present evidence that will clarify the true source of Mr. Wellington's law school financing. The large monitors in the courtroom displayed a comprehensive bank statement spanning 3 years, showing systematic monthly transfers that had funded every aspect of Marcus's legal education. The transfers were precise, methodical, and substantial, totaling over $120,000 when living expenses, examination fees, and professional wardrobe costs were included. Chen pointed to specific line items on the financial records. Your Honor, these transfers originated from savings account number 847291635 at First National Bank, registered under the name Elena Martinez Wellington. Every semester for 3 years, Mrs. Wellington transferred approximately $10,000 directly to the law school's financial office for tuition payments. Marcus leaned forward in his chair, his confident demeanor cracking visibly as the scope of these revelations became clear. Blackstone rose immediately to object, arguing that joint marital accounts were commonly used for educational expenses, but Judge Hendricks instructed Chun to continue his presentation. However, Chun continued, these were not joint marital accounts. These transfers came from Elena's individual savings account, funded entirely through her employment as a senior software engineer at Northstar Technologies. Mrs. Wellington earned an annual salary of $78,000, an exceptional income for someone her age 15 years ago. The courtroom fell completely silent as this information registered. Elena had not been the uneducated, unskilled housewife that Marcus's testimony had portrayed. She had been a highly paid professional whose salary had significantly exceeded the income of most law school graduates during that period. Chen displayed Elena's employment records on the courtroom monitors, documentation that painted a picture radically different from anything the court had heard during the previous sessions. Elena Martinez had graduated magna cum laude from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology with a degree in electrical engineering and computer science. She had been recruited directly from graduation by Northstar Technologies, where she specialized in developing proprietary software systems for industrial automation. Moreover, Chen explained, Mrs. Wellington was not simply a rank-and-file engineer. She held 3 patents in her own name for innovative programming algorithms that were licensed to major manufacturing companies. Her technical expertise was so highly regarded that she regularly consulted on projects that required the most advanced programming and systems integration skills. Elena watched Marcus's face as these revelations emerged, noting the progression from confidence to confusion to something approaching panic. The man who had spent 3 days describing her as someone who had never contributed anything meaningful was learning that she had been more professionally accomplished and financially successful than most people achieve in entire careers. Chun continued his methodical destruction of Marcus's narrative by displaying additional financial records. Mrs. Wellington not only paid Mr. Wellington's tuition and living expenses, but she also liquidated her entire 401k retirement account to provide additional funding when his law school expenses exceeded her current income capacity. She withdrew over $40,000 in retirement savings, paying substantial early withdrawal penalties to ensure that Mr. Wellington could complete his education without financial stress. The documentation showed payments for everything from Marcus's bar examination fees to his professional interview wardrobe to the security deposit on his first apartment during his legal internship. Elena had systematically dismantled her own financial security to ensure Marcus's success, sacrificing not just current income, but future retirement stability to fund his legal career. Marcus attempted to interrupt Chen's presentation, rising from his chair to address the court directly. Your Honor, he said, his voice carrying a desperation that Elena had never heard before. These records obviously show Elena's generous support for what we both considered our shared future. This was a joint investment in our marriage, not some kind of personal sacrifice on Elena's part. Judge Hendricks instructed Marcus to remain seated while Chun completed his presentation, but the damage to Marcus's credibility was already becoming apparent. The confident, self-made success story he had constructed was crumbling under the weight of documented evidence. Chun then presented the most devastating revelation of all. Your Honor, the records show that Elena Wellington resigned from her position at Northstar Technologies at Marcus's specific request during his second year of law school. Mr. Wellington convinced her that her career was preventing her from providing adequate support for his legal studies. She gave up a $78,000 salary and career advancement opportunities to become what Mr. Wellington apparently now considers a useless dependent. Elena's resignation letter, submitted as evidence, included language that revealed the true dynamics of their relationship. In it, Elena explained that her husband required additional support to succeed in his demanding legal program, and that she was willing to sacrifice her own career advancement to ensure his academic success. The letter also mentioned her intention to re-enter the technology field after Marcus completed his education and established his legal practice. The courtroom observers, including several members of Marcus's own legal team, visibly reacted to these revelations. Audible gasps arose from the gallery as people realized the scope of Elena's sacrifices and the depth of Marcus's misrepresentation of their marriage dynamics. Chun displayed Elena's professional credentials on the courtroom monitors, documentation that established her as one of the most technically competent people in the room. Her MIT transcript showed perfect grades in advanced mathematics, computer science theory, and electrical engineering. Her performance reviews at Northstar Technologies consistently rated her as an exceptional performer whose innovative thinking contributed significantly to major client projects. Most importantly, Chun revealed that Elena's technical expertise had been crucial to Marcus's early legal career success. Several of the patent law cases that Marcus had cited as evidence of his individual brilliance had actually relied on Elena's technical analysis and engineering knowledge. She had provided detailed technical consultation that enabled Marcus to understand complex patent applications and develop legal strategies that other attorneys could not match. Blackstone desperately attempted damage control, arguing that marital support and collaboration were normal aspects of successful partnerships. He characterized Elena's contributions as typical spousal assistance rather than the professional consultation that Chun was describing. However, the documented evidence of Elena's technical expertise and financial sacrifices had already transformed the courtroom's understanding of the case. Marcus himself made one final attempt to control the narrative, requesting permission to address the court about these financial revelations. His voice carried forced confidence as he attempted to reframe Elena's sacrifices as joint investments in their shared future rather than individual contributions to his personal success. Elena certainly provided support during my law school years, Marcus acknowledged, but this was always understood as an investment in our combined future. She benefited significantly from the lifestyle that my legal career provided. These early financial contributions were repaid many times over through the comfortable life she enjoyed as my wife. Chen's response was swift and devastating. He presented documentation showing that Elena had repeatedly requested permission to return to her engineering career throughout their marriage, requests that Marcus had consistently denied. Marcus had convinced Elena that her technical work was unnecessary because his legal career was providing sufficient income, while simultaneously preventing her from rebuilding the professional credentials she had sacrificed for his education. Elena's attempts to re-establish her engineering career were documented through employment applications, networking correspondence, and continuing education course enrollments that Marcus had discouraged or forbidden. The evidence painted a picture of a woman whose professional identity and financial independence had been systematically dismantled by a husband who then claimed she had never contributed anything meaningful to their partnership. As Chun concluded his presentation, the transformation in the courtroom atmosphere was palpable. Elena was no longer the powerless, dependent housewife that Marcus had described. She was revealed as a brilliant professional whose sacrifices had enabled Marcus's entire career, whose technical expertise had contributed to his early successes, and whose financial independence had been deliberately destroyed to maintain his control over their marriage. Marcus sat in stunned silence as the full scope of his deception became apparent to everyone in the courtroom. The self-made success story he had constructed was exposed as a carefully crafted fiction that erased Elena's crucial contributions and reframed her sacrifices as personal failures. Elena maintained her composed dignity throughout these revelations, but something fundamental had shifted in her bearing. She no longer appeared to be defending herself against Marcus's attacks. Instead, she seemed to be watching with quiet satisfaction as the truth finally emerged from 15 years of careful burial beneath Marcus's self-serving narrative. David Chun approached the witness stand with a final set of documents that would complete the demolition of Marcus Wellington's carefully constructed narrative. The courtroom had fallen into the kind of absolute silence that occurs when everyone present realizes they are witnessing the unraveling of a fundamental deception. Elena sat with perfect composure, her hands folded quietly, while Marcus appeared to shrink into his expensive suit with each passing moment. "Your Honor," Chin announced, "the complete financial analysis reveals that Elena Wellington's contributions to Marcus's legal career exceeded anything we initially discovered. The total investment in Marcus's education and early professional development was not the $60,000 we first calculated, but rather $187,000 in today's purchasing power." The monitors displayed a comprehensive accounting that left no aspect of Marcus's law school experience unexamined. Elena had paid not just tuition and basic living expenses, but also specialized bar review courses that cost $8,000, a professional wardrobe for interviews and court appearances that totaled nearly $5,000, and even the membership fees for professional legal organizations that Marcus had joined to build his network. Chun methodically detailed every expense that Elena had covered during Marcus's 3-year transformation from graduate student to practicing attorney. She had paid for his law review membership, his moot court competition travel expenses, his summer internship housing in different cities, and even the professional headshots and marketing materials that helped establish his early legal practice. But the financial contributions, devastating as they were, represented only the beginning of Elena's sacrifices. Chun presented employment records showing that Elena's resignation from Northstar Technologies had derailed a career trajectory that would have made her one of the youngest senior engineers in the company's history. Her supervisor's recommendation letter, written before her resignation, described Elena as possessing exceptional technical insight and innovative problem-solving abilities that positioned her for rapid advancement into executive leadership. Elena had been scheduled for promotion to lead engineer with a salary increase to $95,000 annually, a position that would have included stock options and profit-sharing benefits worth an additional $30,000 per year. Her resignation letter, submitted at Marcus's insistence, forfeited not just immediate income, but long-term financial security that would have exceeded anything Marcus achieved during his early legal career. However, Chin continued, Elena's contributions to Marcus's success extended far beyond financial support and career sacrifice. Evidence shows that Elena provided extensive technical consultation that was crucial to Marcus's specialization in patent law and his reputation for understanding complex technological concepts. The monitors displayed email correspondence between Elena and Marcus during his second and third years of law school, messages that revealed Elena's role in helping Marcus understand complex patent applications and technical documentation. Elena had essentially tutored Marcus in engineering principles, computer science theory, and advanced mathematics that enabled him to grasp technical concepts that other patent attorneys found incomprehensible. Chun presented specific case examples that demolished Marcus's claims of individual brilliance and self-made expertise. The Meridian Technologies patent dispute, which Marcus had cited as evidence of his exceptional technical understanding, had actually been won because Elena spent weekends analyzing circuit diagrams and translating complex electrical engineering concepts into language that Marcus could understand and present in court. The Northstar Industrial Automation case, another victory that had established Marcus's reputation in patent law, relied entirely on Elena's expertise in software systems integration. Elena had written detailed technical analysis that explained how the disputed algorithms functioned, analysis that Marcus presented in court as his own understanding of the complex programming concepts involved. Most damaging of all, Chun revealed that Elena had actually authored significant portions of Marcus's legal briefs for cases involving technical patents. Her name appeared nowhere on the legal documents, but her engineering expertise and writing were embedded throughout the technical sections that had impressed judges and opposing counsel with Marcus's apparent mastery of complex scientific concepts. Marcus attempted to interrupt this devastating presentation, rising from his chair with visible desperation. "Your Honor," he protested, "Elena certainly provided some assistance during my early career, but that's normal collaboration between spouses. She was compensated for any help she provided through the comfortable lifestyle my legal career made possible." Judge Hendricks instructed Marcus to remain seated, her expression showing complete transformation from her initial sympathy for his apparent self-made success to something approaching disgust at the scope of his deception. The comfortable lifestyle Marcus claimed to have provided Elena was built entirely on foundation of her sacrifices and ongoing contributions. Chun presented the most devastating evidence yet discovered. Elena had continued providing technical consultation throughout Marcus's career, work that enabled his partnership at Blackstone, Mueller and Associates, and his reputation as one of the state's most capable patent attorneys. Her technical analysis had been crucial to at least 12 major case victories that had generated over $4 million in fees for Marcus's law firm. The partnership that Marcus claimed to have earned through individual merit was actually based on client relationships and case victories that were only possible because of Elena's ongoing engineering expertise. Marcus had built his legal reputation by presenting Elena's technical understanding as his own knowledge, systematically erasing her contributions while claiming credit for insights that he could never have developed independently. Chun displayed Elena's detailed technical notes for recent cases, documentation that revealed her continued involvement in Marcus's most successful legal work. Her engineering analysis of patent applications, her explanations of complex manufacturing processes, and her translation of technical documentation into legal concepts had enabled Marcus to maintain his reputation for technical expertise throughout his career. Elena had essentially functioned as an unpaid technical consultant whose expertise made Marcus's patent law practice possible, while Marcus characterized her as a dependent housewife who contributed nothing meaningful to his professional success. The depth of this deception was staggering in its scope and cruelty. Marcus made one final desperate attempt to control the narrative as Chun concluded his presentation. He requested permission to address the court about what he characterized as Elena's exaggeration of her contributions to his legal career. His voice carried forced confidence as he attempted to minimize the significance of Elena's technical assistance. "Elena certainly provided some help with technical concepts during my early career," Marcus acknowledged, "but this was basic support that any educated person could have provided. My legal expertise, my client relationships, and my professional reputation were built through my own hard work and natural ability to understand complex concepts." But Chen's response destroyed even this final attempt at narrative control. He presented correspondence between Marcus and colleagues that revealed Marcus's desperate reliance on Elena's technical expertise for cases involving any significant engineering or scientific concepts. Marcus had regularly consulted Elena about technical matters, often forwarding complex patent applications to her for analysis and explanation. Most damaging were Marcus's own emails to Elena requesting urgent technical consultation for upcoming court cases. In these messages, Marcus explicitly acknowledged his dependence on Elena's engineering expertise and expressed anxiety about handling technical cases without her assistance. These emails contradicted everything Marcus had testified about his individual competence and Elena's minimal contributions. Elena's sacrifice was complete and systematic, Chin concluded. She had funded Marcus's legal education with her own earnings and retirement savings. She had abandoned a lucrative engineering career at his demand. She had provided ongoing technical consultation that made his patent law specialization possible. She had authored technical analysis that enabled his most significant legal victories. And throughout this entire process, Marcus had systematically erased her contributions while claiming individual credit for achievements that were only possible because of her expertise and sacrifice. Judge Hendricks observed Elena throughout this devastating presentation, noting that she maintained perfect dignity even as the full scope of her husband's betrayal became public. Elena appeared neither vindictive nor triumphant. simply relieved that the truth was finally being acknowledged after 15 years of systematic erasure. Marcus sat in stunned silence as the complete picture of his deception emerged. The self-made legal genius he had claimed to be was revealed as a carefully constructed fiction that depended entirely on Elena's financial support, technical expertise, and career sacrifice. His success was not individual achievement, but rather the systematic exploitation of his wife's capabilities and generosity. The transformation in the courtroom atmosphere was complete. Elena was no longer the powerless dependent that Marcus had described, but rather a brilliant professional whose sacrifices had enabled every aspect of Marcus's career. Marcus was no longer the successful self-made attorney he had claimed to be, but rather someone whose achievements were built on a foundation of deception and the systematic erasure of his wife's crucial contributions. Judge Patricia Hendricks had presided over hundreds of divorce cases during her 22 years on the bench, but she had never encountered deception as systematic and cruel as what had been revealed in the Wellington proceedings. As she prepared to deliver her ruling, the courtroom fell into absolute silence, with even the court reporter holding her breath in anticipation of what everyone knew would be a moment of reckoning. The evidence presented in this case, Judge Hendricks began, her voice carrying the weight of judicial authority and moral outrage, reveals a pattern of deception, manipulation, and systematic erasure that shocks the conscience of this court. Marcus Wellington has constructed a false narrative of individual achievement that not only misrepresents the facts, but constitutes a profound betrayal of the woman whose sacrifices made his entire career possible. Elena sat with perfect composure as Judge Hendricks methodically dismantled Marcus's claims and character. The judge's voice grew stronger with each sentence as she detailed the scope of Marcus's deception and the magnitude of Elena's unacknowledged contributions. Mr. Wellington testified that he built his legal career through individual merit and hard work. Judge Hendricks continued. The evidence shows instead that Elena Wellington funded his legal education with $187,000 of her own earnings and retirement savings. She sacrificed a lucrative engineering career that would have provided her with financial independence and professional fulfillment. Most egregiously, she provided ongoing technical expertise that enabled Mr. Wellington's specialization in patent law and his reputation for technical competence. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair as Judge Hendricks exposed the complete hollowness of his self-made success story. His expensive legal team sat in stunned silence, recognizing that their client's credibility had been utterly destroyed by the weight of documented evidence. This court finds that Marcus Wellington systematically exploited his wife's financial resources, professional expertise, and career sacrifice, while simultaneously denying her any recognition or credit for these contributions, Judge Hendricks declared. He then had the audacity to characterize Elena as someone who never contributed anything meaningful to his success. This level of deception and ingratitude represents a profound violation of the trust and partnership that should define marriage. Elena felt a sense of vindication that went far beyond simple legal victory. For 15 years, she had watched Marcus claim credit for achievements that were only possible because of her support, expertise, and sacrifice. Finally, the truth was being acknowledged by someone with the authority to deliver justice. Judge Hendricks began detailing the financial restitution that would address the scope of Marcus's deception. Given Elena Wellington's documented contributions to her husband's legal education and career development, this court orders that she receive 60% of all marital assets, including Mr. Wellington's partnership interest in Blackstone, Mueller and Associates. Gasps arose from the gallery as the magnitude of this ruling became clear. Elena would not receive the minimal settlement that Marcus had expected to provide to his supposedly dependent housewife. Instead, she would gain majority control over the very law firm partnership that Marcus had built using her sacrifices and expertise. Furthermore, Judge Hendricks continued, Mr. Wellington will pay spousal support of $12,000 monthly for a period of 10 years, an amount that reflects Elena Wellington's sacrificed earning capacity and the standard of living that her contributions made possible. This support will enable Elena to rebuild the professional career that Mr. Wellington convinced her to abandon. Marcus's face had gone completely white as the financial implications of these rulings sank in. The comfortable lifestyle he had enjoyed while systematically erasing Elena's contributions was about to be reversed. He would now be financially dependent on the woman he had characterized as a useless burden. But Judge Hendricks was not finished delivering consequences for Marcus's deception. This court is also referring Mr. Wellington's conduct to the State Bar Ethics Committee for investigation into potential violations of professional conduct standards. An attorney who systematically deceives others about the source of his expertise and achievements may lack the integrity required for continued practice of law. Elena watched Marcus's reaction to this announcement with the same calm attention she had maintained throughout the proceedings. The professional reputation that Marcus had built by claiming credit for her contributions was now under official scrutiny that could result in suspension or disbarment. The transformation in Elena's circumstances began immediately. Within hours of Judge Hendricks' ruling, Elena received a call from Meridian Technologies, the same company involved in one of Marcus's most celebrated patent victories. The company's chief technology officer had followed the court proceedings with growing interest in Elena's engineering background and expertise. Elena's meeting with Meridian Technologies revealed the extent to which her reputation had been preserved within the engineering community despite her 15-year absence from professional practice. Her former colleagues and supervisors remembered her exceptional technical abilities and innovative problem-solving skills. They also understood that her departure from Northstar Technologies had represented a significant loss to the engineering field. Meridian offered Elena a consulting position that would utilize her software engineering expertise while providing the flexibility to rebuild her professional credentials gradually. The compensation package included an immediate retainer of $50,000 and hourly rates that reflected her senior-level expertise. Elena would earn more in her first month as a consultant than Marcus had provided her for household expenses in an entire year. Meanwhile, Marcus faced the immediate consequences of Judge Hendricks' ruling. His partners at Blackstone, Mueller and Associates, called an emergency meeting to discuss the implications of Elena's majority ownership in Marcus's partnership share. The revelation that Marcus's technical expertise had been largely fictional created serious concerns about client confidence and the firm's reputation. Several clients whose cases had relied on Marcus's supposed technical understanding immediately requested reassignment to other attorneys. The Northstar Industrial account, worth over $800,000 annually, terminated their relationship with the firm entirely after learning that Marcus's patent expertise had been largely dependent on Elena's undisclosed consultation. Marcus's colleagues, who had previously regarded him as one of their most capable partners, now viewed him with suspicion and embarrassment. The self-confident attorney who had commanded respect through his technical competence was revealed as someone whose achievements were built on deception and the systematic exploitation of his wife's abilities. Elena's return to the engineering field proceeded with remarkable speed and success. Her consulting work with Meridian Technologies led to additional contracts with other companies that had learned about her background through industry networks. Word spread quickly through the technology community about the brilliant engineer who had sacrificed her career to support her husband's legal education, only to be dismissed and discredited by the man she had enabled. The engineering community's response to Elena's story was overwhelmingly supportive. Several major technology companies reached out with consulting opportunities, job offers, and invitations to serve on technical advisory boards. Elena's expertise in software systems and automation remained highly relevant to current industry needs, and her reputation for innovative thinking had only grown during her absence from professional practice. 6 months after Judge Hendricks delivered her ruling, Elena had established a thriving consulting practice that generated more income than Marcus's law partnership had ever provided. She worked on cutting-edge projects involving artificial intelligence integration, industrial automation systems, and proprietary software development for major manufacturing companies. Marcus, meanwhile, struggled to maintain his lifestyle while meeting his spousal support obligations and dealing with the ongoing State Bar investigation. Several of his former clients had filed complaints questioning whether Marcus had misrepresented his technical qualifications during their cases. The professional reputation he had built by claiming credit for Elena's expertise was systematically unraveling under scrutiny. The most satisfying aspect of Elena's new success was the recognition she received for her technical innovations. 3 patents she had developed before her marriage were licensed by major corporations for significant licensing fees. Her consulting work led to additional patent applications that established Elena as an innovative force in industrial software development. Elena used a portion of her settlement to establish the Second Chance Scholarship Fund, a program designed to help women who had interrupted their professional careers return to engineering and technology fields. The fund provided financial support for continuing education, professional certification, and career re-establishment programs. The scholarship fund's mission statement reflected Elena's understanding of the challenges faced by women whose professional identities had been sacrificed for their family's success. Elena knew from personal experience how difficult it could be to rebuild technical credentials and professional confidence after years away from rapidly evolving fields. Marcus attended the scholarship fund's inaugural announcement event, watching from the back of the crowded auditorium as Elena addressed an audience of technology executives, academic leaders, and aspiring engineers. Her presentation about the importance of recognizing and supporting women's contributions to technical innovation received a standing ovation from the assembled professionals. Elena's speech concluded with a message that resonated deeply with everyone who had followed her story. Professional success is not achieved in isolation, she said. We build our careers on the support, expertise, and sacrifices of others. The greatest achievement is not individual recognition, but ensuring that everyone's contributions are acknowledged and valued appropriately. As Elena left the podium to enthusiastic applause, Marcus quietly exited the auditorium. The contrast between Elena's current success and his own diminished circumstances was too painful to witness. The woman he had dismissed as contributing nothing meaningful had become one of the most respected consulting engineers in the state, while his own career struggled under the weight of revealed deception. Judge Hendrick's ruling had accomplished more than simple financial restitution. Elena's story became a powerful example of how systematic deception and manipulation could ultimately be exposed and corrected through careful documentation and persistent pursuit of truth. Her successful return to engineering demonstrated that professional competence and innovative thinking could not be permanently suppressed by those who sought to claim credit for others' achievements. The final vindication came when Elena was invited to speak at the annual Patent Law Conference, the same professional gathering where Marcus had previously been regarded as a technical expert. Elena's presentation on the intersection of engineering innovation and legal protection drew the largest audience in the conference's history, with attorneys seeking to understand technical concepts from someone with genuine expertise rather than borrowed knowledge. Marcus, who had been a featured speaker at previous conferences, was not invited to participate. His professional reputation had been so thoroughly discredited that his colleagues in patent law now viewed him as a cautionary example rather than a respected expert. Elena's new life represented complete reversal of the power dynamics that had defined her marriage to Marcus. She had reclaimed her professional identity, rebuilt her financial independence, and gained recognition for her genuine contributions to engineering innovation. Most importantly, she had established a legacy of supporting other women whose achievements had been systematically erased or undervalued. The courtroom where Judge Hendricks had delivered justice had witnessed the complete transformation of 2 lives. Elena had emerged from systematic oppression to reclaim her rightful place as a respected professional and innovative thinker. Marcus had fallen from false success built on deception to face the consequences of years spent claiming credit for achievements that were never truly his own. Have you ever had someone take credit for your work or dismiss your contributions to their success? Elena's story shows that the truth has a way of emerging, sometimes when we least expect it. Share your own experiences in the comments below, because stories like Elena's remind us that everyone's contributions deserve recognition and respect.